Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our read aloud of Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. I am reading you this novel with copious interruptions. And we have reached a point where young Harry Annesley, who Trollope has said is the hero of this story, has gone down to Buston, down to the country seat of his uncle, Uncle Prosper, whose heir Harry is and has been for the whole of his adult life. He has been raised in idleness. He has not been told he needs to go into a profession, which he otherwise would have been told because his father is just a country parson who has a large family. He doesn't have any money to give Harry. The old man, Uncle Prosper, has told Harry, well, you're my heir. I will not marry. I will not have children. So eventually the park and the hall will be yours, and I will give you an allowance in the meantime so that you can live without working. Uh, Trollope has called Harry Annesley the hero of the story because he's young and he's handsome and he's got wavy hair. I don't see it myself, and I've never met anyone who did. Trollope has a specialty for creating vapid, handsome young men, but Mr. Scarborough, the character in the title of the book, is obviously the hero. I think the Trollope just didn't want to admit that because it so flies in the face of his Victorian morality. But we are following Harry Annesley. These next couple of chapters are all about him. He has gone down to Buston because he has heard rumors that his uncle doesn't like him anymore, really dislikes him, and wants to cut out the entail, wants to marry even and have children of his own, but certainly doesn't want Harry to be his heir anymore. And these rumors are serious, very serious, because without the money that Uncle Prosper has been giving him, and without the expectation of becoming the Squire of Buston, Harry is nothing. He's nobody. He has no money of his own. He has no means to make money. He has a stipend from his college, but that only stays true if he doesn't marry, and he wants to marry Florence Mountjoy. So he's in a pickle. He doesn't like his uncle, and his uncle doesn't like him. Even before these rumors reached his uncle's ears, they still weren't friends. But he is down with his family, his father and his mother and his sisters, and they are trying to figure out what is going on here. We have been told in the last chapter that Uncle Prosper has dropped a thunderbolt of a tactical move. He has sent a long letter, first of all, accusing Harry of a whole bunch of negative things we're going to hear all about, but also sent word to the family that he doesn't want to see Harry, doesn't want to talk to him at all, which is a serious blow. Harry is smart enough. He's not all that smart, but he's smart enough to see how serious a blow that is. He's not even going to be able to defend himself, which is crucial especially if Uncle Prosper is thinking about marrying Mrs. Thoroughbung and Miss Tickle. So let us see. We are now in chapter 24, and it's called Harry Annesley's Misery. But don't worry for a gloomy Sunday, because his misery is not going to last the whole chapter. The conversation which took place that evening between Harry and his father was more serious in its language, though not more important in its purpose. "This is bad news, Harry," said the rector. "Yes, indeed, sir." "Your uncle, no doubt, can do as he pleases." "You mean as to the income he has allowed me?" "As to the income? As to the property itself. It is bad waiting for a dead man's shoes. And yet it is what everybody does in this world. No one can say that I have been at all in a hurry to step into my uncle's shoes. It was he that first told you that he should never marry, and as the property has been entailed on me, he undertook to bring me up as his son." "So he did." "Not a doubt about it, sir. But I had nothing to say to it. As far as I understand, he has been allowing me £250 a year for the last dozen years." "Ever since you went to Charterhouse, yes. At that time I could not be expected to have a word to say to it, and it has gone on ever since." Harry's point here being that these arrangements were all made when he was little more than a boy. "Yes, it has gone on ever since," said his father. "And when I was leaving Cambridge, he required that I should not go into a profession." "Not exactly that, Harry." "It was so that I understood it. He did not wish his heir to be burdened with a profession. He said so to me himself." "Yes, just when he was in his pride, because you had got your fellowship. But there was a contract understood, if not made." "What contract?" asked Harry, with an air of surprise. "That you should be to him as a son." "I never undertook it. I wouldn't have done it at the price, or for any price. I never felt for him the respect or the love that was due to a father. I did feel both of them, but to the full, but for my own father. They are the sort of thing which cannot transfer." They may be shared, said Harry, said the rector, who was flattered. Of course, it's a naked declaration of his son's love and affection for him. No, sir, in this instance that was not possible. You might have sat by while he read a sermon to his sisters and nieces. You understood his vanity, and you wounded it, knowing what you were doing. I don't mean to blame you, but it was a misfortune. As we've already been told that the old Mr. Prosper likes to... He's a fool. Everyone who knows him, even his own sister, says he's a fool. And he likes to pontificate. He likes to read sermons in barely audible voices after supper. And Harry has left instead of sitting to listen. Instead of sitting meekly under tuition, he has left. We're told at one point that he tells Uncle Prosper that he's going across the yard to services at his father's church. But he doesn't. And word gets back to Uncle Prosper that he doesn't. Your mother has told you that he has written me. There is his letter. You will see that he writes with a fixed purpose. Then he handed to Harry a letter written on a large sheet of paper, the reading of which would be so long that Harry seated himself for the operation. The letter need not here be repeated at length. It was written with involved sentences, but in very decided language. It said nothing of Harry's want of duty, or not attending to the sermons, or other deficiencies of a like nature, but based his resolution in regard to stopping the income on his nephew's misconduct, as it appeared to him, in a certain particular case. And unfortunately, though Harry was prepared to deny that his conduct on that occasion had been subject to censure, he could not contradict any of the facts on which Mr. Prosper had founded his opinion. The story was told in reference to Mountjoy Scarborough, but not the whole story. I understand that there was a row in the streets late at night, at the end of which young Mr. Scarborough was left as dead under the railings. Left for dead? Exclaimed Harry. Who says he was left for dead? I did not think him to be dead. You had better read it to the end, said his father. I think it's very interesting that Trollope, who is known for how entertaining his letters are, doesn't give us this letter because he's already told us it's poorly written. You had better read it to the end, his father tells him, and Harry read it. The letter went on to describe how Mountjoy Scarborough was missed from his usual haunts, how search was made by the police, how the newspapers were filled with the strange incident, and how Harry had told nothing of what had occurred. But beyond this, the letter went on to say, he positively denied, in conversation with the gentleman's brother, that he had anything to do with the gentleman on the night in question. There's only one way that Uncle Prosper could have learned that. There were only two people present in that dinner with Harry, and the other person was Augustus Scarborough. If this be so, he absolutely lied. A man who would lie on such an occasion, knowing himself to have been guilty of having beaten a man in such a way as to have probably caused his death, for he had left him dead under the railings in a London street in the midnight hour, and would positively assert to the gentleman's brother that he had not seen the gentleman on the night in question, when he had every reason to believe that he had been killed, a deed which might or might not be murder, is not fit to be recognized as my heir. So that is poorly written. There were other sentences equally long and equally complicated, in all of which Mr. Prosper strove to tell the story with tragic effect, but all of which had reference to the same transaction. He said nothing as to the ultimate destination of the property, nor of his own proposed marriage. Should he have a son, that son would, of course, have the property. Should there be no son, Harry must have it, even though his conduct might have been ever so abominable. To prevent that outrage on society, his marriage, with its ordinary results, would be the only step, the ordinary results being children. Of that he need say nothing. But the £250 would not be paid after the Christmas quarter, and he must decline for the future honor of receiving Mr. Harry Annesley at the Hall. So there are the two thunderbolts. The allowance is being cut off after Christmas. It's October now. And Harry can't come to plead his case. He's not allowed at the Hall. Harry, when he read it all, began to storm with anger. The man, as he truly observed, had grossly insulted him. Mr. Prosper had called him a liar, and had hinted that he was a murderer. You can do nothing to him, his father said. He is your uncle, and you have eaten his bread. I can't call him out and fight him. You must let it alone. I can make my way into his house and see him. I don't think that you can. You will find it difficult to get beyond the front door, and I would advise you to abandon all such ideas. What can you say to him? It is false. What is false? Though in essence it is false, the words are true. You did deny that you had seen him. I forgot what passed. Augustus Scarborough endeavored to pump me about his brother, and I did not choose to be pumped. As far as I can ascertain now, it is he that is the liar. He saw his brother after the affair with me. Has he denied it? Practically, he denies it by asking me the question. He asked me with the ostensible object of finding out what had become of his brother when he knew himself what had become of him. But you can't prove it. He positively says that you did deny having seen him on the night in question. I am not speaking of Augustus Scarborough, but of your uncle. What he says is true, and you had better leave him alone. Take other steps for driving the real truth into his brain. What steps can be taken with such a fool? Write your own account of the transaction, so that he shall read it. Let your mother have it. I suppose he will see your mother. Does this mean, I suppose he will see your mother? Does this mean that Uncle Prosper won't see Harry's father? Won't see the rector? Just his sister? And so beg his favor? You need beg for nothing. Or if the marriage comes off, you have heard of the marriage, sir? Yes, I have heard of the marriage. I believe he contemplates it. Put your statement of what did occur and your motives into the hands of the lady's friends. He will be sure to read it. What good will that do? No good, but that of making him ashamed of himself. You have got to read the world a little more deeply than you have hitherto done. So both his mother and his father, in different ways, are chastising Harry for being a headstrong, pompous moron. He thinks that he's quarreling with you about an affair in London, but in truth is because you have declined to hear him read the sermons after having taken his money. That could be true. In a normal person, it would be that your nephew is suspected of killing someone. That would be the reason. But we've been told that Uncle Prosper is a moron, an idiot, a ninny. It might be, the rector might be right. It might be that is really the thing sticking in his craw. Then it is he that is a liar rather than I. I, who am a moderate man, would say that neither of you is a liar. You did not choose to be pumped, as you call it, and therefore spoke as you did. According to the world's ways, that was fair enough. He who is sore at the little respect you have paid him takes any ground of offense rather than that. Being sore at heart, he believes anything. This young Scarborough in some way gets hold of him and makes him accept this cock and bull story. If you had sat there punctual all those Sunday evenings, do you think he would believe it then? Could it be true that if Harry had curried this idiot's favor, he wouldn't have listened to Augustus Scarborough? It could be. This is very nuanced human understanding of what's going on here. It's all being done in very broad colors as very broad comedy, but this is nuanced in terms of understanding characters in a way that I would argue is largely absent from, for instance, Charles Dickens. And I've got to pay such a penalty as this? The rector could only shrug his shoulders. He was not disposed to scold his son. It was not the custom of the house that Harry should be scolded. He was a fellow of his college and the heir to Buston, and was therefore considered to be out of the way of scolding. But the rector felt that his son had made his bed and must now lie on it, and Harry was aware that this was his father's feeling. For 2 or 3 days he wandered about the country very down in the mouth. The natural state of ovation in which the girls existed was in itself an injury to him. The girls are in a state of ovation, as Trollope puts it, because of Harry's sister, who is affianced to marry a prosperous young brewer, a very decent gentleman. How could he join them in their ovation, he who had suffered so much? It seemed to be heartless that they should smile and rejoice when he, the head of the family, as he had been taught to consider himself, was being so cruelly ill-used. For a day or two he hated Thoroughbung, though Thoroughbung was all that was kind to him. He congratulated him with cold congratulations, and afterwards kept out of his way. Remember, Harry, that up to Christmas you can always have one of the nags. There's Belladonna and Orange Peel. I think you'd find the mare a little faster, though perhaps the horse is the bigger jumper. Oh, thank you, said Harry, and passed on. Now Thoroughbung was fond of his horses, and liked to have them talked about, and he knew that Harry Annesley was treating him badly. But he was a good-humoured fellow, and he bore it without complaint. He did not even say a cross word to Molly. That's Harry's sister. Molly, however, was not so patient. You might be a little more gracious when he's doing you the best he can for you. It's not everyone who would lend you a horse to hunt for 2 months. Harry shook his head and wandered away miserable through the fields, and would not in these days even set foot upon the soil of the park. So there's a lot of property here. But the park, so officially so called, belongs to Uncle Prosper, and Harry won't go anywhere near it. He was not going to intrude any further, he said to the rector. You can come to church at any rate, his father said, for he certainly will not be there while you are at the parsonage. Oh, yes, Harry would go to the church. I have yet to understand that Mr. Prosper is the owner of the church, and the path there from the rectory is at any rate open to the public. He's being petulant here. Mr. Prosper has not said that he can't set foot on the park. Harry's deciding that. Well, I guess he doesn't own the path. I guess I can walk there. You could walk in the park as well. Uncle Prosper is probably not going to stop you. For at Buston, the church stands on one corner of the park. Harry's just being petulant. This went on for 2 or 3 days, during which nothing further was said by the family as to Harry's woes. A letter was sent off to Mrs. Brown, telling her that the lodgings would not be required any longer, and anxious ideas began to crowd themselves on Harry's mind as to his future residence. He thought he must go back to Cambridge and take his rooms at St. John's and look for college work. 2 fatal years of idleness and gaiety, had been passed, but still he thought that it might be possible. What else was there open for him? And then, as he roamed about the fields, his mind naturally ran away to the girl he loved. How would he dare again to look at Florence in the face? It was not only the £250 per annum that was gone. There would have been a small income on which to marry, and he had never taken the girl's own money into account. He might want to do that. It's not a small amount of money that Florence has coming to her on her majority, on marriage. Properly invested, a couple living modestly could probably live on her money. He had rather chosen to look forward to the position as Squire of Buston, and to take it for granted that it would not be very long before he was called upon to fulfill that position. His uncle is only 50. He had not said a word to Florence about money, but it was thus that he had regarded the matter. Now the existing squire was going to marry, and the matter could not be so regarded any longer. He saw 6 little Prospers occupying 6 little cradles, and a whole suite of nurseries established at the Hall. The name of Prosper would be fixed at Buston, putting it altogether beyond his reach. In such circumstances, would it not be reasonable for Florence to expect him to authorize her to break their engagement? What was he now but the penniless son of a poor clergyman, with nothing on which to depend but a miserable stipend, which must cease were he to marry? He knew that he ought to give her back her troth, and yet, as he thought of doing so, he was indignant with her. Was love to come to this? Was her regard for him to be counted as nothing? What right had he to expect that she should be different from any other girl? Then he was more miserable than ever, as he told himself that such would undoubtedly be her conduct. As he walked across the fields, heavy with the mud of a wet October day, there came down a storm of rain which wet him through. Who does not know the sort of sensation which falls upon a man when he feels that even the elements have turned against him? How he buttons up his coat and bids the clouds open themselves upon his devoted bosom. I suppose some people have known that that feeling. My strong advice to those people would be get a dog. Okay. Anyway, we get a little more Shakespeare here. Blow winds and crack your cheeks. Rage blow you cataracts and hurricanes. Harry is not King Lear. Okay. It is thus that a man is apt to address the soft rains of heaven when he is becoming wet through in such a frame of mind. And on the present occasion, Harry likened himself to Lear. It was to him as though the steeples were to be drenched and the cocks drowned when he found himself wet through. In this condition he went back to the house, and so bitter to him were the misfortunes of the world that he would hardly condescend to speak while enduring them. But when he had entered the drawing-room, his mother greeted him with a letter. It had come by the Daily Mail, and his mother looked into his face piteously as she gave it to him. The letter was from Brussels, and she could guess from whom it had come. It might be sweetly soft love letter, but then it might be neither sweet nor soft, in the condition of which things Harry was now placed. He took it and looked at it, but did not dare to open it on the spur of the moment. Without a word he went up to his room and then tore it asunder. No doubt he said to himself it would allude to his miserable stipend and penniless condition. We're going to get the letter. Florence has written Harry a letter. I might point out here, just parenthetically, he got soaked to the bone, came inside, and stayed in his wet clothes. No fireplace, no drying off, no nothing. Just say it, that's all. The letter ran as follows. My dearest Harry, I think it right to write to you, though Mamma does not approve of it. I have told her, however, that in the present circumstances I am bound to do so, and that I should implore you not to answer. Though I must write, there must be no correspondence between us. Rumors have been received here very detrimental to your character. Harry gnashed his teeth as he read this. Stories are told about your meeting with Captain Scarborough in London, which I know to be only partly true. Mamma says that because of them I ought to give up my engagement, and my uncle, Sir Magnus, has taken it upon himself to advise me to do so. So it hasn't been an easy run for Florence. over there in Florence. Over there in Brussels. We haven't seen it, but she's been got at by both her mother and her uncle. I've told them both that which is said of you is in part untrue. But whether it be true, whether it be false, I will never give up my engagement unless you ask me to do so. They tell me that as regards your pecuniary prospects, you are ruined. I say that you cannot be ruined as long as I have my income. It will not be much, but it will, I think, be enough. £9,000, properly invested, it'd be enough. Not be much, it'd be enough. And now you can do as you please. You may be quite sure that I shall be true to you, through all ill report and good report. Nothing that Mamma can say to me will change me, and certainly nothing from Sir Magnus. And now there need be no word from you if you mean to be true to me. Indeed, I have promised that there will be no word, and I expect you to keep my promise for me. If you wish to be free of me, then you must write and say so. But you won't wish it, and therefore I am yours always, 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 your own Florence. Harry read this letter standing up in the middle of the room, and in half a minute he tore off his wet coat and kicked one of his wet boots to the further corner of the room. Then there was a knock at the door, and his mother entered. "Tell me, Harry, what she says." The family's half expecting that the letter is her calling things off, or asking him to call things off. He rushed up to his mother, all damp and half shod as he was, and seized her in his arms. "Oh, mother, mother." His clothes are wet. He's damp. What is it, dear?" "Read that and tell me whether there ever was a finer human being." Mrs. Annesley did read it, and thought her own daughter Molly was just as fine a creature. This is the second time we've been told that Mrs. Annesley is not going to be turned from her loyalty to her Molly. Florence was simply doing what any girl of spirit would do. But she saw that her son was as jubilant now as he had been downcast, and she was quite willing to partake of his comfort. "Not write a word to her! Ha ha! I think I see it myself." "But she seems in earnest there." "In earnest? And so am I in earnest. Would it be possible that a fellow should hold his hand and not write? Yes, my girl, I think that I must write a line. I wonder what she would say if I were not to write." "I think she means that you should be silent." "She has taken a very odd way of assuming it. I am to keep her promise for her, my darling, my angel, my life. But I cannot do that one thing. Oh, mother, mother, if you only knew how happy I am. What the mischief does it all signify, Uncle Prosper, Miss Thoroughbung, and the rest of it, with a girl like that?" And that is how the chapter ends. Harry has been kicking up dirt all over the countryside, feeling sorry for himself, and now he's in seventh heaven again because he got this letter. So it is just possible that Uncle Prosper is not the only impulsive ninny in the family. That's just faintly possible. But Harry is back in jubilation because his Florence has written to him and said, the worst has been said about you down in Brussels. Not only that you are guilty of all of this nefarious stuff that the police want you for, but also that you're disinherited, that you don't have any money any more than Montroy Scarborough does, and that it doesn't matter. I'm yours until you tell me I'm not. That's going to put sunshine in the heart of any wavy-haired young man. So that's where we end this chapter for now, and we will move on next time. Thank you, BookTube.